Today I'm talking about A Night at the Opera by Queen, released on November 28, 1975, in celebration of its 50th anniversary. It's an interesting story because the band was completely broke despite having a big hit on the radio. I will be telling all the story about how the band had some legal and financial troubles before recording the album, but eventually everything worked out and it became one of their most popular albums. I will be discussing the story behind it as well as the songs, and then in the end I'll give you my thoughts on how I feel about this album 50 years later. But let's get into the story first. The story begins in 1974. Queen had just released their third studio album called Sheer Heart Attack. This was the album that helped get them big and into the mainstream. They had a big hit with Killer Queen, which reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. Although in the US it was a minor hit, but it still reached number 12, while Killer Queen reached the top 20. You would think at this point they had made it big and were a bunch of rich and successful rock stars, but the opposite was true. They were broke. This was because they had signed a contract where they had to produce albums for a production company who in turn would then sell them to the record label. In other words, they didn't see any money from the sales. They just earned £60 a week. The situation reached a turning point when bassist John Deacon was denied a £4,000 cash advance from their manager Norman Sheffield after getting married, preventing him from putting a deposit on a house. There will be a song about this later. The band decided to get a lawyer named Jim Beach to help them get out of their contract with the Trident production company. At this time, the band was still on tour as Jim Beach studied the contracts. Negotiations continued for the next 9 months, and they were able to get out of their contracts. They were then signed to EMI Records in the UK and Elektra Records in North America. They were also able to regain control of their back catalog. This process was not easy, though, as they had to pay £50,000 to Trident, and in turn, Trident would earn 1% royalties on their next 6 albums. They continued to tour to help raise funds to pay what they owed, with one tour being canceled in 1975, which set them back. Their funds were running low, so they began to search for a new manager. There were 3 prospects. One was Peter Rudge, who managed The Who and the Stones, Peter Grant, who managed Led Zeppelin, and John Reid, who was Elton John's manager. They almost went with Peter Grant, but he wanted to sign them to Led Zeppelin's Swan Song, but they were worried that Zeppelin would be his priority, so they went with John Reid, who was apprehensive at first, but eventually he took them on and he told them to go in the studio and make the best record that they can. It's now time to record the album. They went with Roy Thomas Baker as producer and engineer Mike Stone. It was also reported that this was the most expensive album ever made thus far, with an estimated cost of £40,000. I adjusted this for inflation using a calculator at Bank of England. So in today's economy, it would be about £383,000. The album was recorded at 7 different studios over a 4-month period. In the summer of 1975, they spent a month rehearsing in a barn that would eventually become Ridge Farm Studio in Surrey, England. Then they spent another 3 weeks writing and rehearsing at a house near Kingston, Hertfordshire, before recording. Afterwards, they recorded the album in different studios over the next few months, which lasted until November 1975. The album was also recorded using a 24-track tape, which was an upgrade from the first 3 albums, which were only recorded on a 16-track. This gave them more freedom to do vocal harmonies, as you will see later when I discuss the songs, including the very well-known Bohemian Rhapsody and another song which I think might even be better and is kind of an unknown song, but I'll get to that. The album was now complete with a total of 12 songs. All 4 members were given writing credits. Most songs were written by Brian May and Freddie Mercury, but John Deacon and Roger Taylor each wrote 1 song. Roger Taylor provides vocals on 1 song and Brian May on 2, and there's an instrumental of the British national anthem, God Save the Queen, arranged by Brian May, which is the last song on the album. But let's go to the first song on the album, which is called Death on 2 Legs, written by Freddie Mercury. I kind of hinted at the song before. It's about the problems they had with their original manager and owner of Trident Studios, Norman Sheffield, who, after the release of the song, filed a defamation lawsuit against Queen and their label, but resulted in an out-of-court settlement. What's interesting is that the song didn't mention Norman Sheffield by name, but the lawsuit ended up revealing his connection to the public. According to Freddie Mercury, he tried to make the lyrics as coarse as possible. The band was shocked at first, but they decided to record it as Freddie wished. The song was eventually played live throughout the 1970s, and there's only one live version, which appears on the 1979 album Live Killers. After this is a short song that's called Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon. It's only a minute and 8 seconds long. It's written by Freddie Mercury. One of those Queen songs that has a sound and style of 1920s cabaret. I'll be honest with you, this is one of my least favorite songs on the album. I'm not into this type of music that much. But it's short, and the rest of the album is really good. After this is kind of a weird song called I'm in Love with My Car. It's the only song on the album written by Roger Taylor, and he's also on lead vocals. The song is basically a love song to a car. It was inspired by their roadies named Jonathan Harris, who owned a sports car called Triumph TR4. This car was allegedly the love of his life. He was even mentioned in the liner notes, which said, dedicated to Jonathan Harris, boy racer, to the end. The end of the song features the sounds of a car revving, but that was made by recording Roger Taylor's car at the time, which was an Alfa Romeo. Roger Taylor also insisted that this would be the B-side to their first single, which is Bohemian Rhapsody. More on that later. Side 1 continues with You're My Best Friend. This was written by John Deacon for his wife, Veronica Tetzlaff. John Deacon plays bass as well as a Wurlitzer electric piano. Freddie Mercury is on vocals, and he plays a grand piano whenever it is played live. There's also a music video made for the song showing the band in a huge ballroom surrounded by over 1,000 candles with a huge chandelier hung from the ceiling. The song was released as a single in 1976 and was successful, reaching 16 on the US Billboard Hot 100. The song would also be used in various TV shows and movies such as The King of Queens and The Breakup. After this is a song called 39, written and sung by Brian May. The song was inspired by Brian May's studies in astrophysics. It's about astronauts who go on a year-long voyage and return to Earth, where it is 100 years later and all the loved ones are either dead or like really old. After this is another song written by Brian May called Sweet Lady, which is about a toxic relationship where one person feels manipulated and controlled. So the name of the song is actually sarcastic, as it's about a partner who is hurtful but claims to be loving. This is also one of the harder rocking songs, which even feels close to heavy metal. If you listen to the guitar parts, the song also has some complex drumming by Roger Taylor, as it begins in a 3/4 time signature and shifts to a 4/4 after the bridge. Side 1 closes with Seaside Rendezvous, another fairly short song, just over 2 minutes. Like I said before, one of those songs that's in this style that I didn't like that much. This one is in this 1920s foxtrot style, but what's interesting about the song is that the band plays various instruments. For example, Freddie played a clarinet, Roger Taylor played various instruments, including a kazoo. Side 2 opens with what I believe is one of the most underrated Queen songs in their entire catalog, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. It's called The Prophet's Song. The song is 8 minutes and 21 seconds long. It's officially the longest song with vocals ever recorded by the band. The song was written by Brian May. He said he wrote the song after he had a dream about the Great Flood while he was recovering from being sick during the sheer heart attack sessions. The song is heavy, it's dark. It's an example of how versatile the band can be, as it's also considered to be a progressive rock song. Over the years, the song received a lot of praise. Rolling Stone magazine, at the time of release, called this the best track on the album and praised Brian May's guitar work as well as the multi-tracked harmonies. After this is another very popular song called Love of My Life, written by Freddie Mercury. According to Freddie Mercury, he said the song was not about anyone in particular, but most people believe it was about his longtime girlfriend and lifetime friend, Mary Austin. The lyrics describe the pain of a love lost and a very deep connection. Most people know the story behind Mary Austin, as Freddie Mercury met her in 1970. They had a relationship, but it ended in 1976 when Freddie Mercury revealed his sexual orientation. The song is a heartfelt ballad, and most people are convinced it's about Mary Austin. But there's another song called The Good Company, written and sung by Brian May. Songs about a man who became obsessed with his work, that he alienates his friends and ends up all alone. It's a different type of song from the band. It's considered to be Dixieland jazz. Some people have compared it to the style of Paul McCartney. Actually, in my opinion, I thought it sounded like a Beatles song. It has that signature guitar sound of Brian May, but kind of sounds very Beatles-esque. I think if someone had heard this on the radio and didn't know who it was, they might think it's a Paul McCartney song, but that's just me. Finally, we get to the end of the album, which is the song Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't have to go into too much detail about the song. There's so much behind it. The song probably deserves a whole separate video, but I'll just make a few comments on its popularity. We could probably say this is one of the most successful rock songs in the history of rock, because if you look at the charts, you will see it hit #1 in multiple countries between 1975 and 1976. Then it became popular again in 1991 with the movie Wayne's World, and also hit #1 in various countries and charted in many others. But that's not all, because in 2019, after the release of the movie of the same name, it charted again. It didn't do as well as the first two times, but it made the top 10 in many countries. So I could say it's probably one of the most popular rock songs and successful singles on a global scale. In conclusion, I think some people consider this to be their best album. I think for me, it has some of their best songs, but there are a few tracks that I don't really care for, and I mentioned them throughout the video. It has some of their best songs, like the Prophet song, Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm in Love with My Car, Love of My Life. But there are a few filler tracks, in my opinion, although some people might not consider them as such. But anyway, that's my opinion. Let me know your opinion. Check out this video on A Day at the Races. I did this video about 5 years ago when it celebrated an anniversary. I'm going to stick it right there for you to check out next. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please like the video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe. If you have not already, I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. And I will see you in the next one.